Good evening. So I've been doing some traveling back and forth with work, flying back and forth to Connecticut, and I was trying to come up with a good sermon topic. And of course, being out on the road and traveling, you always have devices with you, whether it's your phone or your laptop or something like that, and you're always worried about making sure the battery was fully charged, So it got me thinking, how does that apply to our spiritual life? So I came up with a sermon, and the topic is called, Have You Charged Your Spiritual Batteries? And it took me a little bit of time to try to apply this to our spiritual world as well as our physical world. And let's take this for an example. Let's imagine for a minute that you're late for work. You're out running around, you're jumping in your car, and you think, all right, if I can make it, if I can just get in my car and just drive to work really fast, I'll be able to make it on time and I won't be late. You stick the key in the ignition, you turn it over, click, 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 battery's dead. You sit there and you have that sinking feeling and you're like, oh no, my battery's dead. I'm not going to make it to work on time. I left something on in the car, the radio, left something plugged in, completely drained the battery. Or for another example, you're out running around and you know that you're going to get an exciting or a very, really important phone call. You pull out your phone to check it, you look at it, and it goes beep, beep, and it says battery, critically low. And you only have 1% battery life, and as soon as that phone call comes in, the phone's just going to die. It's not going to work. Now, just like our phone and our car, these batteries required a multitude of conditions in order to function correctly. For example, you need gas in the car to run the engine to charge the battery, and you need the properly working charging system in order to charge that battery correctly. You also need to make sure you don't leave things on in the car that drain the battery and cause it to go dead, like your headlights. Just like batteries in our spiritual world, what have you done to ensure that your battery, your spiritual battery, stays fully charged and always available? Now let's go through this scenario and see how this works. Now, here we have a car that's dead, and the guy's on the phone because he's got a dead battery. Now, in order to charge that up, he has to go to his house in order to plug in to charge that up. All right? Now, he gets his power from the power station. All right? Now, if we sit there and think about it, in order to turn on that power, we have to go to the power company. And in order to get the power company to turn it on, this person has to give a bunch of money to flicker power and light to turn it on in order to get your power, to charge your batteries, right? Now let's think about this in a spiritual context, right? So now here we have you with a low spiritual battery. And in order to charge your battery, you have to go to church. And in order to go to church and get that power, you have to get it from God. Now, in order to get that power, you have to go through, and you have to go through Christ, who enables you. In order to make that payment, you have to be baptized. All right? So as you can see, both in the spiritual world and the physical world, there's always going to be some sort of mediator that's going to allow you to get that power to charge your batteries, all right? Now, that person here with the spiritual battery, if we take a look at Romans 10:17, it says, so faith comes by hearing, and hearing through the word of Christ. Now with that, you know that you have a dead battery. You know that you need to hear something in order to charge that battery or do something correctly. Now, with the church, if we look at 1 John 1-7, or 1:7, it says, but if we walk in the light as he is in the light, we have fellowship with one another, and the blood of Jesus, his son, cleanses us from all sin. So he is going to be your mediator in order to have the spiritual power that charges back up again. Now, Almighty God right here, in 2 Corinthians 13:4, it says, for he was crucified in weakness, but lives by the power of God. For we are also weak in him, but in dealing with you, we live with him by the power of God. So it's kind of interesting how that spiritual and physical context of how we get power from the power company also comes back from the power of God to charge this all-important battery that we have. Now let's go back to the example earlier, where I showed you how we receive power from the power plant. Every month, whether we like it or not, we get that bill. It comes in the mail. Flicker Power and Light. The bill shows us that we've actually received a service, and to continue receiving that service, the power company requires some sort of payment in return in order to get something back. Now, from a spiritual context, just like the power bill, God requires us to be able to provide a payment in order to stay in fellowship with him. And to do this, we have to do that by partaking in the Lord's Supper. All right? So we have the body and the blood, right? And that is our payment that we give each week back to the Lord. With this payment, it allows us to remain in good fellowship with God. We remain in good standing with Christ, who is our creditor, who allows us to be able to have our spiritual batteries charged. Now, let's go back to the example of that battery again. When your phone battery is low, you go home, you plug it in the phone charger in the wall, and you begin to consume electricity. And because you paid for your electric bill, you paid for electric power from the company, voila, your phone's charged in a couple of hours, no problem whatsoever, right? Now, just like our phones, in a spiritual context, we have spiritual batteries that need to be continuously charged as well, and they need to be charged daily. In order to do this, we go through and we go to church, right here, and we fellowship where we can actually plug in with Christ, and we begin to consume his word, thus charging our spiritual batteries. Now that we've gone over the spiritual battery and how we charge it, let's go over usage. Just like anything else in life, as you go through and you use something more and more, the quicker it's going to run out of power. You can be talking on your phone, you play a lot of games, you watch some videos, or even just not plugging in for a long time, that battery is going to continuously degrade over time. Just like your phone battery, your spiritual battery will also do the same and will not stay charged forever. And there's many factors that actually go into this in the spiritual battery that cause us to have that short battery life. Now, if we take a look at our friends and peers for an example, these can quickly shorten the life depending on our influences. And a great example of that is in Proverbs 13:20. Proverbs 13:20 says, "Whoever walks with the wise becomes wise, but the companion of fools will suffer harm." Now, with friends and peers, they can continue to wear on us. They can give us and lead us in astray, lead us in a bad direction. So we have to continuously fight them. So it's going to drain that spiritual battery that we have. So it's going to be kind of difficult in some cases. That's why it's very important to surround yourself with peers that are very Christian-minded and Christian thoughtful. Now, the world. The world can quickly wear us down. They encourage us to skip church, go out, sleep in on Sundays, not have to come to church, go out to parties, etc. An example of this is 1 John chapter 2, verses 15 through 17. So 1 John 2, 15 through 17, it says, "Do not love the world or the things of the world, in the world. If anyone loves the world, the love of the Father is not in him. For all that is in the world, the desires of the flesh and the desires of the eye and pride and possessions, is not from the Father, but is from the world. And the world is passing away along with its desires. But whoever does the will of God abides forever." Now, it's very important to think about that. Now, the world's going to die. It's going to basically be incinerated when the Lord comes back. However, spiritual, it's going to be able to stay with us forever. We're going to be able to walk in eternal light, just like that payment that we make there. Now, the third thing is is skipping services. Now, you put yourself at risk if you don't go through and you charge your phone on a daily basis. And just like skipping services, it's like not charging that battery. You're going to run out of juice when you probably need it the most. In Hebrews 10:25, it explains this great. Not forsaking the assembly of ourselves together, as the manner of some is, but exhorting one another, and so much more as ye see the day approaching. So it's very important that we go through and we don't forsake the assembly, and that we actually show up on time, that we show up whenever the services come about, and that we don't forsake the assembly by skipping services, so we can continuously charge that spiritual battery. Now that we've gone through some of the usages, it's important to stop and think about, okay, well, that's great. What do I need to do to actually extend my battery and make it that much more resilient? So that way I'll always have a full charge. One great way of doing this is by going to every church service. We need to be sure to attend every service in order to keep that battery fully charged. Just like here, we need to go through and plug in to the church. Now, how do we keep it charged? We can also do this throughout the week when we're not attending services by going through and actually reading the Bible, going through and reading verses, studying together, worshiping together, being able to have Christian thought processes and mindsets. So that way you're not wearing out that battery that you have, because you remember you only have a limited supply before you need to go back and get that recharged again. And one of the most important parts is to go through and pay the spiritual power bill right here. By going through every week and partaking in the Lord's Supper, it's very important that we pay that spiritual power bill before we get cut off. Because once we get cut off from service, remember, there's always going to be a reconnect fee, just like with Flicker Power and Light, to turn that service back on again. And it's not easy. Just remember, each time when you see that power bill come in the mail, or you pick up that cell phone and you see that you have that dead battery, you'll go back and think about this lesson tonight as an example of your spiritual battery and how it always needs to be charged in order to stay within fellowship with God. It's not something that you have to do, but it's something that you need to do in order to stay in fellowship. If your phone needs charging, your spiritual battery probably needs charging as well. Be sure that you have your spiritual batteries fully charged and not get caught with a dead spiritual battery. Now, if you're here with us tonight and you would like to have that battery bestowed upon you in order to have that spiritual battery to be able to go forth before God, please come forward as we stand and sing.